What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video about Solasta, Crown of the Magister. We're going to be focusing on the Sorcerer update and everything, as you might imagine, with the title and everything. But for those unaware, we are going to cover a little bit about what Solasta is here. I'll post some timestamps down below if you're more interested in just the Sorcerer stuff, but we will be covering just a few generic things about the game as well as a whole real quick. So first things first, Solasta is out and available now. There will be a link down in the description below that will take you to the Steam store page if you're interested. And the Sorcerer update that we're going to get into is free, so if you buy the game you will get the Sorcerer update. Now, Solasta itself is a tactical turn-based RPG that focuses on combat encounters as a faithful, rules-as-written adaptation of D&D 5th edition. Now, broadly speaking, much like D&D, you're going to make a party of characters. You can do this in-game either using pre-generated characters that the development team made for you, or you can, of course, make your own characters with the character creator in-game, which is kind of what we'll be talking about with the Sorcerer here in just a minute, as, again, the Sorcerer class was added on top of the other 6 classes that were already in-game available for people to play, which are the Ranger, Paladin, Cleric, Wizard, Rogue, and the Fighter. Now, on that front, there are 2 things that I love about character creation in this game, and that is that the UI, honestly, just across the entire game is amazing. Probably, weirdly enough, my favorite thing about it is just how clean this game's UI is. Can't stop talking about it. But moreover, while the classes available are very traditional D&D classes, because Solasta is a unique world, they made unique subclasses and things for those classes. So while the classes themselves should be familiar, keep in mind some of the details like the subclasses can feel very unique. And once you make those characters, you are going to take them on an adventure very similar to a Dungeons & Dragons module. It is a 1 through 10 adventure, so the max level being 10 as opposed to 20, which is the max in D&D just across the board. But there you go, guys. There is kind of an overview of what the game is as a whole, and now let's jump into the new stuff. This is not something you have to pay for. It is a free update, so as long as you own the game, you will of course get this update as well. So before we jump into the Sorcerer and everything about what it does, we are going to cover everything that is in this patch real quick. So in addition to the Sorcerer, they've also added an Iron Man mode, if you're unfamiliar. Iron Man mode is basically a one and done kind of thing. You get one save file. If your party goes down or you can't revive or something, or you get a game over basically, the save file deletes itself, and you only get the one shot at it. Pretty common difficulty mode these days. You can, of course, only pick that at the start of the campaign. Obviously, that's not something you can turn on mid-game. In addition, Rangers should be able to replace one known spell on a level up now. Spells themselves should be able to be upcast, even when doing so wouldn't provide a benefit. You would use this for spells that would not scale to the next level, but say you're out of spell slots to cast it at the level that it would stop scaling at, you could then go a level higher or whatever to use that spell slot to have something to cast. They also added the Dominate Beast spell to the game. High CR Sorax are not affected by the Calm Emotion spell anymore. And lastly, as far as big content goes, the Dungeon Maker had 2 campaigns specifically made by the developers, Tactical Adventures, added to the Dungeon Maker set. So you can just play those anytime you like if you want some more Solasta to play, if you don't want to run through the main campaign with the Sorcerer, for instance. But on that note, if you're unaware, there is a Dungeon Maker in-game accessible from the main menu where you yourself can make dungeons, because in addition to the 2 specific campaigns that were added to it now, they also added a ton of assets to the Dungeon Maker, allowing you to yourself create more robust dungeons should you so choose, as well as being able to download them and stuff from, I believe, the Steam Workshop, as well as things like Nexus mods. Basically, people can make adventures and you can play custom stuff and not just the main campaign. So that little feature saw a ton of expansion with this particular patch. Now, with that out of the way, let's jump into the actual details of the Sorcerer. So first up, if you are new to CRPGs or this genre in general, and you're just looking this video up as a sort of informational thing, Sorcerers are wizards who cast their spells on a more instinctual basis. So what that means in gameplay mechanics is that a wizard will typically have more known spells, whereas a sorcerer will have less spells known, but are usually better at casting more of them, because sorcerers will use a class mechanic called sorcery points. So starting at level 2, you will get a sorcery point per sorcerer level that you have. So if at level 2 you would have 2 points, at 3 you would have 3 points, etc. Now as a bonus action each turn, you can use these points to convert the sorcerer points to spell slots, or a spell slot to a sorcery point, which means you'll be able to cast tons of your prepared spells. Now, in addition to being able to convert those points into spell slots, you can also use those points in later levels to use things like meta magic. Meta magic is things that will alter what a spell does, its range, its power, that kind of thing. Those are also things you could spend sorcery points on. So at level 1, you'll be asked to pick a bloodline, because sorcerers gain these powers that they have from an ancestor or something to that effect, typically speaking. So the 3 bloodlines we can choose from are Draconic, Mana Painter, or Child of the Rift. Now, Draconic is kind of the classic one. Basically, somewhere in your past, there is a dragon in your lineage, and it has manifested in you as, powers over magic. Mana Painter is the ability to draw magic from the things around you, basically. Apparently your ancestors used to do this, and it's kind of genetically carried on to you. And then the last one is Child of the Rift. Basically, the cataclysm that is part of the world of Solasta had such an impact on the people of the surrounding area that it just straight up tainted their blood. And now sometimes that manifests as powers in certain people. Now, in addition to the bloodline themselves having flavor choices, they obviously do things for you mechanically, but they actually also do things for you visually. So with the sorcerer, depending on the bloodline you pick, you will get a unique visual effect on your character that you may have kind of seen here already. For the Draconic bloodline, that is scales, of course. For Mana Painter, you have sort of like ley line magic lines on your face. And then for Child of the Rift, you have like black eyes and kind of like smoke effects going on. You can change the color of these effects as part of the appearance customization options once you get to that point, so I thought that was a nice touch. They also mentioned that they might look into adding stuff like this for other classes in the future, but as of right now, it's just the Sorcerer that gets these. Now, before we jump into the mechanics of each of those bloodlines, let's talk about what the Sorcerer is going to get as it levels up. So first things first, at level 2, you pick up sorcery points and flexible casting. This is everything to do with sorcery points that I mentioned earlier. At level 3, you're going to start picking up meta magic. This is where you can start picking options to use your sorcery points on for things other than just exchanging them for spell slots. At level 4, we can choose to either take a feat or increase one of our ability scores, that is to say our attributes, if you're more familiar with that term. But basically things like intelligence, strength, etc. This is probably a good time to mention that the sorcerer class runs off of charisma and constitution primarily, as far as their saving throws and things go. However, you might want to actually put in a little bit of dexterity, because some spells actually use dexterity to target with. But for the most part, dexterity, constitution, and charisma should be the attributes you're looking at. At level 8, we get to make that choice again. And then at level 10, we get a third meta magic option. Now, that seemed a little light, but keep in mind we're going to get more stuff with the bloodlines here in just a second, so this is where we're going to start talking about those. For the Draconic bloodline, you are going to get extra spells as you level up. These will always be prepared for you, meaning you can cast them basically just as long as you hit that level with the appropriate spell slots. At level 1, for Draconic, you get Shield. At level 3, you get Misty Step. At 5, you get Counterspell. At 7, you get Greater Invisibility. At level 9, you get Hold Monster. In addition to this, you get to pick a Dragon Ancestor type. This is essentially picking an elemental damage type. Now, we'll explain why that's important in just a second. In addition, we also get Draconic Knowledge, which means we speak Draconic. And we also get Draconic Resilience, granting us 1 additional hit point per level. And our armor class is 13 plus our dex bonus when we're not wearing armor. Now, at level 6, Draconic Bloodline Sorcerers will get Elemental Affinity and Draconic Resistance. For Elemental Affinity, when we deal spell damage matching our Draconic Ancestor, we will add our Charisma modifier to the total. For Draconic Resistance, we gain resistance to the damage type of our ancestor for an hour at the cost of a sorcery point. And that brings us to the Mana Painter. So for their extra spells, they get Entangle at level 1, Bark Skin at level 3, Sleet Storm at level 5, Fire Shield at 7, Conjure Elemental at 9. They also pick up Mana Absorption. Their Charisma modifier is used if it is higher, instead of other ability modifiers, on their saving throws against spells or magic effects. And then at level 2, they actually pick up Mana Drain as well. They get to make a melee spell attack. If it's successful, the target creature takes 1d10 plus your charisma modifier and force damage, and you regain a sorcery point, but you do need to take at least a short rest to recover this power. At level 6, you gain mana tap. When you finish a short rest, you can gain a number of sorcery points equal to half your sorcerer levels rounded up, and for this, you have to complete a long rest to regain. And that brings us to our Child of the Rift Bloodline. So our spells for this are Guiding Bolt at 1, Aid at 3, Daylight at level 5, Banishment at level 7, and Greater Restoration at level 9. They also have Rift Magic as a class feature. Immediately after you cast a sorcerer spell of level 1 to 5, roll a d20. If you roll a 20, your spell slot isn't spent. And then at level 2, they pick up Rift Deflection. They can use their bonus action to spend 1 sorcery point to become harder to hit and achieve better saving throws until the start of their next turn. And then at level 6, they pick up Offering to the Rift. They can use their bonus action to sacrifice 5 hit points in order to regain a sorcery point, and then the sacrificed hit points are recovered after a long rest. So there you go, guys. There is the update for the Sorcerer class in Solasta Crown of the Magisters, a tactical RPG all about bringing D&D 5th edition combat to the video game space in as a rules as written manner as possible. And honestly, Tactical Adventures has done a great job at that. While I think the story is kind of okay for the most part, the combat itself in this space, as well as the UI, are honestly my favorite things about the game. I'm a big fan of the way they implemented the Sorcerer, especially the unique visuals. I think they didn't have to do that part at all, honestly. I don't think anybody was expecting them to do it either, to be honest with you. But I'm a big fan of the visuals they added. That was really cool. In addition, if you're interested in learning more about the game, I have videos that will go over more specific subjects individually if you're kind of just interested in learning more about Solasta. With all that out of the way, truly, just thank you guys so much for watching. I couldn't do this without you guys, so honestly, just truly, thank you so much. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.